Hello, everyone, and welcome to That Deacon on YouTube. This July, the Episcopal Church plans to gather in Baltimore, Maryland for our triannual General Convention. The convention was to meet last summer, but due to COVID restrictions, the convention was delayed until this year. This means that in only 2 years, the General Convention will meet again to elect a new presiding bishop. At present, with an uptick in COVID cases, the wider church will take into consideration the health and safety of all who plan to participate. As far as I am aware, the convention will reduce its agenda to take care of necessary matters and table what might be considered less pressing legislation. For those who don't know, our General Convention for our church has a long history. At the end of the Revolutionary War, the Anglican Church in America was in disarray, mainly because it had its roots in the Church of England. Bishop William White, a disciple of John Locke, believed that the Church, like the state, should function as a democracy. He proposed that congregations in each state should unite to form an annual convention of clergy and lay representatives of the congregations, which would meet every 3 years. William White, by the way, became the very first presiding bishop of the newly founded Episcopal Church, formerly known as the Church of England. The legislative body of the Episcopal Church consists of a House of Bishops, which includes all active and retired bishops, and House of Deputies, populated by 4 laypersons and 4 clergy from each diocese, each area mission, and the Convocation of American Churches in Europe. The houses meet and act separately, and both must concur to adopt legislation. The General Convention alone has the authority to amend the prayer book and the Church's constitution, to amend the canons, which are laws of the Church, and to determine the program and budget of the General Convention, including the missionary, educational, and social programs it authorizes. Does this type of legislative body sound familiar? It should, as it is believed that our legislative polity went on to inspire the Constitution of the United States, as many members of the committees who wrote this document were Episcopalians. I hope you enjoyed this thumbnail sketch of history, but that's not why I brought this up. There are 2 opposing viewpoints which may be discussed and debated regarding a canon, which means a rule surrounding Eucharist and baptism, the 2 primary sacraments of our church. The Diocese of Northern California proposed a change in the canon regarding non-baptized individuals being allowed to receive bread and wine at communion. The resolution is simple. It says the Diocese of Northern California requests that the 80th General Convention repeal Canon 1.17.7 of the Constitution and canons of the Episcopal Church, which states, "No unbaptized person shall be eligible to receive Holy Communion in this church." Some of their arguments in support of changing this canon are: according to the Gospels, during the Last Supper, Jesus made no mention of the requirement for recipients of bread and wine taken in remembrance of him to be baptized. It is uncomfortable to visualize Jesus turning anybody away who desires to remember him. The Holy Eucharist, described in the Catechism section of the 1979 Book of Common Prayer, makes no mention of baptism being a prerequisite for receiving communion. Baptism is a vital part of being a Christian, but not, according to the Gospels, a prerequisite for partaking in the holy meal. It took the early church about 300 years to arrive at some consensus regarding baptism and attending a Eucharistic meal. The earliest rules come from what is called the Didache, which means teaching, written in the late 1st or early 2nd century. This document says, "Let no one eat or drink of your thanksgiving, but they who have been baptized in the name of the Lord. For concerning this also the Lord has said, Give not that which is holy to the dogs." The dog reference is from Matthew 7, which is rough speak for discernment. This means that taking part in Eucharist demands careful thought and consideration. But remember, this edict was written at a time when participating in gatherings was, in effect, treason against imperial Roman theology, where the cult of the emperor was law. Those who don't think we should remove the canon will cite tradition and keeping Eucharist as a sacrament held in great esteem as unique to Christianity. And since the Eucharistic meal is a primary focus of worship, it should only be offered to those who have been inducted into the wider Christian body. Having a discussion about the focus on baptism with regard to receiving communion is a good thing. And conversations like these, I believe, are beneficial for the Church because it forces members to look at radical hospitality and its true importance for us as the body of Christ. But I hope this issue does not turn into a theological food fight, which tends to happen when people on both sides of the issue are locked into their position. One thing not yet acknowledged is this: we as a church do not check baptismal certificates at the door, and we don't ask for proof of baptism when people come to the altar rail or those standing before us to receive communion. There is no reasonable way to know the history of each person participating at Eucharist. The canon on the books has historic accountability, but is mostly unenforceable. If you find these videos helpful, informative, or interesting, please consider subscribing. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button and then the bell icon, which will then inform you when new content is available. And if you feel like it, give this video a thumbs up. In recent times, I can't recall a priest ever announcing to the congregation that only baptized people can receive the gifts of God for the people of God. I have on occasion seen written in bulletins that baptized visitors are welcome to receive communion. But I guess writing the canon in a bulletin was a means of indemnifying the parish from staying within the bounds of canon law, while at the same time turning a blind eye for the sake of hospitality. Relying on biblical stories is unreliable when it comes to institutional rules and regulations. We are told that Jesus was baptized, but there is no record of any of his disciples having been baptized. But there are accounts of disciples baptizing others. So I think it might be a weak argument to use as a primary reason for retaining this canonical rule. Personally, I truly enjoy the rite of baptism, be it a child or an adult. I love the fact that baptism is a rite of initiation into a fellowship of believers. I love the creation of the 1979 prayer book, Baptismal Covenant. This declaration is brilliant. I love that the congregation is asked if they will support the newly baptized. And I love hearing the people respond with, "We will." Maybe one workaround might be to invite all people to the table, but say something about how we are joined into a diverse community of seekers, supporting one another and the community at large through baptism. As everyone is welcome to the table, it is so much deeper through our common bonds contained within our baptismal covenant. As with many canon debates, I think what we'll see is a natural disconnect between intellectual theology and reality. When it comes down to it, and in the great scheme of things, on the books or off, all, and I mean all, are welcome. I'd be interested to hear from you regarding this proposed change. I'd love to see what you have to say in the comments section regarding the proposed removal of this canon requiring baptism as a prerequisite for receiving communion. Remember, please be gracious and welcome viewpoints which may differ from your own. Lastly, whether the canon stays as is or is altered or removed. Now, it takes 2 readings at 2 conventions for this change to take place. It's not worth anger or distrust. Thanks for watching, and remember, through baptism, all of us are called to serve others using our unique gifts.